Okay. Can you see that screen? This new screen here? Amelia, could you confirm that you can see the screen? Yep. Okay.
Can.
Thank you.
Can.
So this is an overview. You can see this is Kayla 2. This is the high-grade area in this section here, where the collapse was. This is the extension we were talking about, right? And this is where we are entering the tunnel here, in this part. So we're entering here, and we're heading to this section, right? And the continuation is here. This is Kayla 1. This is the one I mentioned that has the 2 veins now. One, we have results from back at the beginning, that meaning back in our first sampling, that's 75 grams per ton. The second vein, we just discovered it this week. We don't have the grade yet. It'll take about a week. And actually, it's interesting, but if you stand on the cliffs here, you can see the veins in the ocean. You know, when the waves go back, you can actually see the mineralization, because of course that material's been washed away and exposes out. And actually, there's even miners of the past, they will use ropes and go down the cliffs and dig into the high-grade material and pull it up. It's a very rich zone here. So you can see here, there's a neighboring mine. You know, this guy's asking $2 million for his. It's only about 25 hectares. The house is 100 and 100. There's multiple other properties around us, and we see this as the next high-grade district of Chile. That's what Nibaldo and I believe. So this is a further development. You can see we installed our campsite here. It's bigger than this now, but this was how it was in this video. This is our water tank. This is the high-grade area that I keep mentioning. This is the mine entrance. This is the tunnel that I told you that the guy came back, went down and in along the vein to that high-grade. The vein curves, by the way. You'll see that later. And the mineral that we extract from the vein, we store here in the mineral stockpile area, waiting for the assay results to come in, so then we can process that material in the plant, knowing what we have grams per ton and what our earnings are going to be before processing. And then during processing, you sample the process, right? So that you know what you're recovering and what you're not recovering. And we would use an external processing plant for the mineral. And so this just gives you a good overview of visually how it's set up, right? So this is a summary of the plan, the startup plan. As you can see there, we've been doing this for 5 months now. So the first step was the geological mapping and sampling. That's been completed. The campsite installation is completed. Tunnel widening for drilling campaign is completed. The drilling campaign is going to start. They're setting up the rig at the moment. It'll start in the next few days. Mineral extraction is completed. We started extracting mineral this month, and sales will be completed at the end of the month when we take that mineral that we've produced this whole month, and at the end of the month we're going to truck it to a processing facility, and there we are going to liberate the gold, and the gold we're going to commercialize locally, and that's going to complete the cycle that we committed, our startup commitment, to our investors, to our founders. And basically from that point, the project is on its way, right? It just continues as per the plan that we have in place, as per the budget and as per the plan. Now, once we drill, we are going to update the mine plan and we are going to update the budget based on this new data, this new information, this new facts. So every time, just so everyone knows here, every time we drill, we update the budget. Every mining company in the world has a 5-year, typically a 5 to 7 year projected plan, and every year they update it from the drilling of that year, and they typically extend a year or more, depending on what they discover, their production. So you have to replace every year the mineral that you took out, you have to replace, so you continually have 5 to 7 years, right? To put that into perspective, our objective is 38,000 ounces, 7 years. We have a potential of 351 in Kayla 2. We could put $7 million tomorrow, and we could prove up all the production of Kayla 2, but we would need $7 million, right? So and we would have 70 years of production based on our business plan. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to put in, $5 million in drilling, proving up, 70 years of production. It doesn't make sense today, right? It does make sense for the future from earnings to do that, because then you have a potential exit on this project of 60, 70 million for Kayla 2, selling it to a major where you've de-risked it, you've drilled it, you've permitted it, you're in production, you're cash flow positive, you put on a silver platter, they'll pay you, 60 to 100 million dollars depending on the gold price, because you've done all the hard work, right? You've taken all the risk. Always the risk is this stage, and the highest possible benefit you could get is in this stage, because you're in the discovery stage of a deposit. This would be a very different Zoom call post-drilling, because post-drilling I would say, and we drilled it, and this was our results, and this is what we have, and now our company is worth this, right? Just to give a bit of any questions on that, by the way? This is a good slide here. This is what we call the vein discovery. This is a new vein discovery. It's where they bring in the excavator, the geologist, and they get it to dig, and based on the results, there's either a new vein or there isn't a new vein. In this case, there is, and you can see here they do a channel sample all the way from here along the whole face, and every meter approximately they make a marking, and they number it, GPS it, and they put that sample in a bag, and that bag goes to the laboratory, and the results come back, and you put that grade on your map and on this vein, and you have it then on your topography, and that adds a new vein with a new value, with a new heading, and you start to get to know this new vein and whether or not it's economically viable, what's the grade, what's the width, how far away is it from the other veins, and all of this feeds into your mine plan, your drilling plan, or your expansion of the deposit. So we, just to give a clear information, Nicole, we have not had enough time to finish the exploration of the whole 100 hectares. We have been focusing on this high-grade area, the 4 veins that are there, and we have been slowly discovering, it'll take months, slowly discovering and understanding the rest of the deposit potential, where you need to use a exploration geologist, excavator, and an assay laboratory and a topographer. And those guys would have at least a couple months worth of work, maybe more, to know everything that could be in the rest of the deposit, right? And the first step would be going for the easy signals, right? The outcroppings is what you first focus on. And then in some cases, there is an outcropping because it's covered with earth, with material, right? So it makes it hard to see those veins. So the other tool you use is the drilling, right? And so the drilling cuts through whatever is there. And you'll see that here in a minute. So this is the tunnel entrance here that we were looking at before. The green is the tunnel. This is a cross section where he abandoned it here. When I say he, I mean the previous owner. He stopped here. Our calculation today is it's about 20 meters or 30 meters more this direction, and we're going to cut the parallel vein, and if we go for about 40 meters up to here, we should cut three parallels. And that's something that we have started doing already, and expect to have that completed at the end of the month. And that's separate to the principal vein here that we are following. This tunnel now is about here because of what we have been, or maybe here, what we have been advancing this last 3 or 4 weeks. Just a side note, the previous owner, he got to here, and he wasn't so impressed with the grade. For us, it's impressive, but for him, it wasn't so impressive because he wanted to get into the 40 grams a ton and the big stuff. So he went left here because he wanted to cut this big vein here. But he entered into another person's property, and so the government came on there. Chile is very regulated, so you get inspectors come to your mine regularly, right? Every couple months, someone's there checking what you're doing. Do you have all the safety equipment? Do you have your permits? How is your rock stability? How are you, mining in comparison to what you plan? And in this case, as he doesn't do topography, as he doesn't have geologists, he doesn't have all those tools that I mentioned in the difference between, the small scale guy and the major, and Trident, I guess, we're somewhere in the middle, right? So he didn't have that information, so he crossed into a third party's property, and he was told that he couldn't continue anymore. So you can imagine how many thousands of dollars he spent on this tunnel, only to be, it's about $1,000 or more a meter, only to be stopped. So that's what gave us the opportunity to acquire the property, because he's tight for money. He invested more than he had. The results didn't come. They came, but as you saw his sales, but this is not paying anything. This whole section isn't paying anything. All of this was paying, right? Not every single meter, but the majority of this section was paying. So you can imagine his disappointment, frustration, and humbling for him as well, because imagine 4 or 5 years ago, he wouldn't sell the project to Yamana Gold. They offered him millions of dollars for it. He wouldn't sell it. And because, think about it, guys, if you can do, if it's true that there's 100 grams per ton or 200 grams per ton at the depth, at a deeper level of this high-grade area, if that's true, then this guy would have been doing $1 million a week, right? As opposed to, I don't know, 10 or 20 or $1,000, right? So the difference is huge. So for him, it was, well, I don't want to sell it. I'm going to just do it myself. And all of the best intentions and pretty good knowledge of mineral, actually. He's got a gift, but he was underfunded. He didn't have the ability to drill. He didn't have the funds to have a team like we have. So he makes mistakes, and they are costly, right? That's the same map that we were looking at before, and you can see here he was getting 60 centimeters, or 0.6 of a meter, 30 grams. It's almost an ounce per ton. 1.5 at 21, 1.5 at 6, and here about 1.2 at 3. So this is where he got cold feet, right? He's like, okay, I want to go to something that's going to pay me more. And this is on surface, it's running 4.5 meters wide, which is huge, at 6 grams per ton. So you can imagine the quantity. It's 4 times the mineral at 6 grams per ton per blast, as opposed to the split blast, right? And then up here you've got these super high grade surface samples, 49, 18, 6, 4, 6, a little lower here, 1. But this is at surface, and surface samples typically are lower than, not always, but lower than, because of being weathered, being on the surface, than what's in the ground, right? So thanks to his mistake here, we can, this is the same tunnel you were looking at before. Here's the entrance, right? That's the crosscut we're going to be using to get the parallel veins. And this is where we are today. We're advancing along here, but this is where we are today. And we're going to use this mistake tunnel to position our drill rig, because it gives us a great angle for us to be able to, every 25 meters, de-risk the production ahead of the vein. So before we get to the mineral, we know what it's worth and how wide it is, and that's how every time we drill, we are going to be updating our mine plan and updating our project budget, right? Cash flow projections. So we were lucky to have that parallel tunnel, because we can put our drilling station here. So, as I mentioned before, the last part of the process is taking the mineral and processing it, right? So we can sell to the government the mineral as mineral at 48 cents on the dollar, or we can do the extra effort, pay a per ton fee to a local plant, and recover 80 to 90% of our, anywhere as low as 75, anywhere as high as 85% of our gold, and pay a per ton fee. We recover our gold, and then we commercialize it, right? Which obviously is the more attractive option. The most attractive option in the future, which we'd like to do from production or a raise, would be to put in our own processing plant, because we would earn 20 to 30% more by processing it on site, as opposed to trucking the material to an external facility and paying, excuse me, paying this facility a fee above and beyond the actual cost of processing, right? Because that's how that person makes a living. So this is one of multiple plants. It's not my favorite, actually. It's not the one we're going to use, but it's one that I have footage on that I could put into this video for you guys. And it is one we can use. It's actually quite close to us, but there's another plant a little further away, German descendant guy, and he has a much better processing facility. He has more elements of recovery, or more elements of extraction. So it gives us a higher yield. It's more freight, but it's a higher yield. And these are part of the, these are part of the processes that we are going to go through in the next months, right? We're going to be taking our mineral, we're going to be running it through this plant, it's a little further away, we're going to try this plant, it's a little bit closer, doing different trials, finding our sweet spot, what's the best cost, and eventually doing metallurgical testing from after getting the drilling results. We'll take that mineral and we'll send it to the local university, and they'll do metallurgical test work so that we can know our rock hardness, our brine size, optimized brine size, the best recovery, and what our processing, future processing plant cost, recovery, and design would be based on the facts from the university, right? So everything is a process, and you can only take it step at a time. And that would be something that we would do down the road from our drilling results. So remember we mentioned that the gold is in a rock, and the rock has to be crushed and then ground. So it's crushed, it's already been crushed because the rocks come out quite big from the mine. And then it's going to be in the ball mill where it's going to be like ground down to a sand, and like we saw him doing by hand. And then you add water, 80% water and 20% solids, and that gets pumped around the plant facility through different stages of recovery. So the first one would be gravity, weight, like we saw with the horn, and the next one would be flotation, which is an additive you add to these cells that agitate and create these bubbles, and the bubbles catch. So anything heavy gold goes to gravity, anything light gold goes to flotation. Okay, Mr. Lee, we just finished the second video.